Man, we got a weird one for you today. This raid by the Dalton brothers in 1892 on Coffeyville, Kansas, is absolutely stunning in how unbelievable it is. I've often said you can't make up anything funnier than real life. But let's start when it seemed as if the robbery was going to go good. And this is an actual quote from a bystander. The five men rolled boldly and at a swinging trot, raising a cloud of dust which literally enveloped them as they passed down 8th Street. And that's from my Classic Gunfights book. I must have spent about a year and a half trying to get all the loose ends of this together. And sometimes it's just unbelievable, like I said, and I think you're going to have the same feeling about it. The idea was Bob Dalton said we're going to outdo our kin, the James Gang, and the Youngers. They're related to the Youngers. Their mother was a Younger. And they're going to rob two banks at the same time and outdo them. And so they knew Coffeyville very well because they lived there for a short time. And so they had a master plan, and they rode down 8th Street. But then something happened so casual, so ridiculous, that undid the whole raid right off the bat. We'll get to that in a minute. But they tied their horses in an alley, and they walked. There was five of them: Bob, Grat, and Emmett Dalton, Bill Powers, and Dick Broadwell. And the eyewitnesses said that they were wearing false whiskers. They had fake mustaches and beards on because Bob and Grat were from the area, and then they were afraid that people would recognize them. Well, that's exactly what happened, though, is that people just saw right through it, and they knew it. It was a Wednesday morning, a lot of people out on the streets. And the three of the robbers went into the Condon Bank, which is on a corner, kind of an island, like in New York City, Times Square. We have a picture of it that shows a panorama of the robbery site there. And right in the middle there, that little cornucopia building there, that's the Condon Bank. They were going to go into that bank, and then Bob and Emmett, the two brothers, kept walking, and they were going to go across the street to the First National Bank, and simultaneously they would get all the money and they would ride out of town, and they could sell all their stuff and go somewhere else because there was so much heat coming down on them from the three guardsmen. And the three guardsmen were Bill Tillman, Heck Thomas, and Chris Madsen. They'd already arrested like 300 outlaws, sent the rest to prison, and they were zoning in on the Dalton Gang, and this was going to be their last hurrah and their big fat payday. Well, of course, Grat Dalton led the group that went into the Condon Bank, and the first thing that happened was, said, "This is a robbery," and the bank teller said, "Sorry, the vault is locked. It's on a time lock, and it won't open." And Grat says, kind of flustered, "Well, we can wait." And so then two more customers come in the bank. They take them hostage. But outside the bank, while he's wasting this valuable time, the Iceman runs into Isham's Hardware, which is catty corner, and he says, "It's the Daltons. They're robbing the bank." This is how quickly their cover evaporated because everybody in the town knew them. And so Isham's Hardware store and another hardware store start handing out weapons and bullets. And so within 5 minutes, there's like 15 guys that are there, civilians that are armed. And so the time is ticking inside the Condon Bank, and he's starting to become, Grat is leading that charge. And so he's becoming a little panic stricken, you might say. And meanwhile, over in the First National Bank, Bob's having a better take of it. They scooped up some cash. They were getting ready to leave. But because the guy yelled out that they're robbing the bank, now you have 3 or 4 guys in front of Isham's, and they're armed and they're ready to shoot at the bank. They don't realize that the other bank's being robbed at the same time. Well, a guy from about 80 yards away, one of the civilians, fires a shot into the window, the plate glass window, and hits Dick Broadwell, and there's a Powers. One of the guys gets hit, and he goes, "I got hit, I got to go down." So now they're all panicked. And once the guy starts firing, now they all start firing. And there's a famous photo of the Condon Bank where it's just the bullet holes all through the windows. And so Bob Dalton and his brother Emmett try to go out the front. But what they meet is three of the guys in front of Isham's, which is like two doors down. They fire at him. So now he's going to go out the back. He goes out the back, and somebody from Isham's was given a pistol, and he goes out the back of Isham's, turns left, runs right into Bob. Bob says, stop. He obviously didn't hear him or didn't understand or recognize that they were the robbers. And so Bob Dalton said, I've got to have that man. That's a quote from the record, and shoots him right below the heart. And then him and Emmett take a hostage north, try to make their way around back to their horses. Well, by now, all hell is broken loose. Everyone's armed. Everyone's shooting at them. But now it's going to get worse because the alleyway is a virtual shooting ducks. It's like a shooting ducks alley right down in there. There's a representation of it that I drew about it just to give you an idea. And they start sending volley after these guys because when the guys left the bank, somebody said that it was the, where can I find this? It's just a fabulous quote. Oh, here it is. The plinking and whizzing of airborne missiles becomes a shower and then a storm. Isn't that fantastic? And so the bullets were just raining on them. They were all hit. And Bob and his brother Emmett came down a side alley to join the others in the alley where their horses were. And then the increase in volume becomes even more. And they're all shot. Bob shot in the chest, goes down, shot in the hip. Emmett shot 4 or 5 times. He gets on his horse to try to leave. 2 of the horses are killed. They're killed because of all the gunfire that's raining down this alley. And he gets on his horse and could have escaped with a couple of wounds. But instead, he turns to go directly into the fire to rescue his brother Bob. Does that sound familiar? It will when I remind you why. He allegedly gets up to Bob, and Bob says, die game. It's no use. I'm done. And a guy steps out with a shotgun and shoots Emmett Dalton in the back, and he falls down in the dust. So after all of this shooting, all 4 robbers, 4 of the robbers are dead, and Emmett is badly wounded and not expected to live. And so he's taken to the farmer's house where he recovers, but we'll get back to that in a minute. So you might say, well, what did the Daltons do? I mean, were they robbing banks and trains at their will? What kind of outlaws were they? I love this quote from Littleton Dalton. First of all, the Daltons, all 12 strong, they had 12 kids, okay? Lewis and Adeline had 12 kids, and one report says 15. I mean, I had 2 kids. 15, that's 3 basketball teams. That's a baseball team with a deep bench, okay? That's ridiculous. But anyway, and it's so no wonder that, well, yeah, 5 of them turned out to be bad, but the rest are really good people. And this is the case of a Littleton Dalton, who had this to say about them being outlaws. And I think it just sums up, we have this idea that the outlaws are out riding around and they're living it up in every town and everything. And because of what I mentioned, the 3 guardsmen, they were just methodically going through the Oklahoma Territory and just taking these guys out. I mean, it's truly phenomenal, the task that they did. But here's how much fun the Daltons were having, according to their family member, Littleton. The last time I ever saw Bob or Grat was just before the Coffeyville raid, when the 3 boys came to my mother's home near Kingfisher. They had been running and hiding for months. Their clothes were worn out. I gave them all the clothes I had, a good Stetson hat, which Bob had on when he was killed, and a good coat and overcoat. They scarcely thanked me. They expected me to keep on putting up for them indefinitely. End of quote. Well, that gives you a little bit of an idea that it wasn't all fun and games and the exotic life of an outlaw, at least in Oklahoma in the 1890s. The background on the boys is kind of sketchy, and a lot of things are hard to verify. But we do know that 3 of the Dalton brothers were lawmen. Frank Dalton was killed in the line of duty, one of the older brothers, and Bob was a deputy marshal, and so was Emmett, who often accompanied him out on assignment. They make the claim that they didn't make enough money, so they started selling illegal hooch to the Indians of the Osage Nation. And eventually Bob lost his badge for that. And then they went out to California where they got in more trouble. They may have robbed a train out there. They came back and they tried a couple of train robberies. One they got $70,000 for, but most of them were a bust, $50 here. And certainly, so they wanted to do this one last bank job to make their mark so that they could leave the area. And does that sound familiar? That's exactly what Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid said. That's probably what every person in the penitentiary says to their cellmates from time to time. But what happened after the robbery is even more incredible. It's weird. So you're all familiar with the famous picture of the Daltons laying dead and they're lined up side by side. That's the most famous photo of them. I remember buying that as a kid. In one of the photos in this series, there's a little boy looking through the crack there above Broadwell's head. And the actual, and I was told when I used to read True West as a young boy that they were put in the bank window. And I thought that was just so cool that the bank said, oh yeah, you think you want to rob our bank? We're going to put you right in the window when you're dead. But it turns out that they were actually in Death Alley where they were killed. And somebody, 2,000 sightseers came in on the train to see the robbers. And so you can get a sense of this. We have a photograph of all the people in Death Alley, and they're playing with the bodies. That sounds horrible, but they are. They lay them on a hay mow. Somebody take it out of their wagon, and they put it up against that building there. And they lay them on there. And if you remember, in one of the photos, there's a Winchester across their leg and another little boy is looking in the corner. And essentially, people were cutting off the tails of the horses that were dead. And you can see that a pants leg is missing in the photo. That's because people are cutting their own little snippets for posterity. Gruesome. And then it gets worse, okay? So basically, they take these 4 dead guys and they throw them in the jail, lock them in basically a little hut back there in the alley, and they all go home. And then they come back in the morning and they open up the hut and they start playing with the bodies again. This is just too weird to be true, but it is true. And so they are all posing with them and doing all these kind of things. And then, lo and behold, Emmett survives, and he does some prison time, but he gets out. I think it was on good behavior, or some one of those things, and he goes to California, and he becomes a celebrity. I just think this is so interesting about American life, that somebody starts out. That's him with there in the black hat in the middle between Charlie Siringo, who we know, and Frank Miller of the Miller Brothers show. The guy on the right, we don't know who that is. Typical thing. Well, hey, Bill, get in there, and pose there. People are going to know you are 100 years from now. No, they're not. But anyway, so he writes 2 books that do pretty good, and he also is in a movie. Okay, movie's a total bust, but he actually has a little bit of luck in publishing, which is its own incredible thing. Anybody that makes money in publishing is incredible to me, because I know how tough it is. Anyway, he all of a sudden he's in Hollywood, and he's befriending all these big guys, and then he's the one. Emmett Dalton is the one who's called Heck Thomas and Bill Tillman and Chris Madsen. He named them the Guardsmen because he claimed that when they were out hiding in the bushes and trying to stay alive, that they called them the 3 Guardsmen. And so, isn't it ironic that it started that the saying, which is now well known all over Oklahoma, came from the outlaw Emmett Dalton. Now, if when I was describing that to you, I think you have to admit that it sounded similar to another bank raid, and that would be the James Gang at Northfield. And that is the fact that in both robberies, a quick thinking bank teller lied that the bank vault was not open when it in fact was. In fact, there was $40,000 in the Coffeyville bank, the condom bank, that they could have gotten, but Grant was so dumb or too dim-witted and that he believed the guy. And the same thing happened in Northfield, where the Haywood would not open the vault. There were also believed to be an extra man in both raids. In the Northfield, it was believed to be a ninth man, which is argued about even today. And in the Coffeyville raid, there was thought to be a sixth man. And so that lines up exactly. Also in both robberies, there's a legend that a town lawman hid and didn't help. Because you'll notice if when I was telling you this, there really wasn't any lawmen directly involved, or not much, and certainly none in the Northfield one. And so they share that little anomaly. The next one is just outstanding, weird to me, is that two of the surviving bandits in both raids became the object of affection from women. And they sent them bouquet of flowers in both cases. In the James Younger gang debacle at Northfield, it was Bob Younger. And in this case, the Daltons trying to do Coffeyville, it was Emmett Dalton. And so he got marriage proposals and all. Isn't that, it says so much about celebrity and how bankrupt it is. it just blows my mind. Like I said, you can't make up something more strange than real life. And I think one of the takeaways in this incredible story is that there's a fine line between catching an outlaw and becoming one. And in the case of Bob Dalton, he was a good lawman, and so certainly his brother Frank. And it's just such a thin line, because you go, you know what? People don't want to deal with those guys. I'm the only guy can. Why don't I try it? Maybe I can make a little money out of this. See, I think there was one more thing about the Dalton thing, the similarities. Anyway, so when I was doing this book, I didn't quite understand it, and maybe you don't either, because it's so complicated. They're here, they're in the alley, they go here. But the real incredible thing that happens in life is that the smallest, tiniest thing can undo an operation. One of the great generals said that the difference between winning and losing in battle is an eyelash. And that's what happened here, because Bob Younger set it up so that they would rein their horses in at McCoy's Hardware or the Opera House, which is behind the bank, okay? And as they came riding down and they were committed, they were already in town, they saw that the street was torn up and they were paving the street. And so they'd taken all of the hitching posts out on the street. So he says, let's turn right here. And so they turn right and they park in the alley, which turned out to be, as Emmett said late in life, the worst possible place they could have put the horses in the entire state. Okay. And if you're like me, I have to walk the area. That's why I've been to the OK Corral. That's why I've been to Mescal Springs. That's why I've been to Stinking Springs. That's why I've been to the Number 10 Saloon in Deadwood, because once you're there and you actually walk it, you really get a little extra sense of what happened. And nowhere is as clear as in Coffeyville, Kansas, because when you get on the ground there and you walk up that street toward the Condon Bank, and then you stand in front of where the location of where Isham's Hardware was, and you look down that alley, you're going to say, just like I did, oh man, that was, it's just, they're sitting there and they had stuff piled up outside of Isham's, and they literally had free ammunition, and they're just shooting for the fun of it, and they just sent a wall of lead down that narrow corridor, and you couldn't make that up. I mean, you couldn't. The coincidence of and here's the just a really depressing part, if you sympathetic to the Daltons. If they had been able to put their horses behind at McCoy's or the Opera House, they probably, 4 of them would have got away, and they got away with some money. And there's that one little detail that they could have never predicted, that they were paving the street. There's a metaphor in there, I think. Anyway, that's my story on the Dalton Gang's raid on Coffeyville. By the way, Coffeyville was named for James A. Coffey, who was had a trading post there. I thought maybe it had to do something with coffee or something, but him and another guy, I think it was U.S. Captain Blanton, they did a coin flip though who would get to name the town, and coffee won, and so it's forevermore been known as Coffeeville, Kansas. Well, hey, I hope if you like this talk, you'll subscribe and hit like at the bottom, and do send us some comments, because we really like it when you tell us what you would like to hear, or if you want to hear more of something, less of something else. It really helps us. So thank you, and we'll talk to you later.